This is Present Politics, hosted by leading political strategist Rashad Ritchie and civil rights attorney Robert Patillo. Listen as they interview trendsetters and newsmakers, both local and national. This is our time to talk about political issues that matter to us. Guaranteed to be controversial and always informative. Join us every Saturday from 4 to 6 p.m. only on Love 860 WAEC, Atlanta's inspirational talk radio. You can also listen online at presentpolitics.com.
Good afternoon and welcome to Present Politics. I'm your host, Robert Patillo. Rashad Ritchie is in South Georgia and will be calling into the show later on, but we do have a jam-packed episode with some great local and national stories on politics and also the input of our great listeners, you, the Love 860 Present Politics audience. So please be sure to call in 404-355-8699. Again, that's 404-355-8699. Or you can follow us at presentpolitics.com. Also, don't forget our social media, facebook.com/presentpolitics and Twitter @presentpolitics. Whew, it's a mouthful. Our marketing director keeps telling us I have to keep pushing the social media. So make sure you do follow us online because it's a great way to stay interactive. We try to keep all of our content current, all of our things hot and popping in the streets so we can make sure that our listeners are getting the stories that they want to hear and that you're staying in contact with us. Again, I'm your host, Robert Patillo. Now, I wanted to start with a big story that we had here in Atlanta. But before we do that, we're going to patch in our co-host, Rashad Ritchie, who's on the line. Rashad, you there?
What's going on, Robert? How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. How's that drive going?
Man, listen, I'm coming back, and just so the listeners know, I'm coming back from North Georgia. Just had a really big training for some of our Democrats who are looking to become elected, as well as those who are already elected. They just needed a refresher course. It looks like we had about 10 counties that were represented. It was huge, and I still got about 2 hours of road ahead of me, but I wanted to make sure that I definitely called in and said hello to our listeners on Present Politics with Rashad Ritchie and Robert Patillo. And Robert, what you got coming up on our item list to talk about today?
Well, the first thing we're going to talk about is this big issue of the Lifeline phones here in Georgia. Somehow I ended up plastered all over the media across the state trying to fight for phone service for our low-income individuals. So we're going to talk about that. We have Georgia Korn calling in, who's a professor at Ohio State University who works close with issues such as this. We're also going to talk about the Lamar Willis versus Andre Dickens city council race here in Atlanta, which has gotten dirty. So we got to talk about it.
Man, it's a rough election. It's going to be rough on Willis. He's had some issues. It's kind of ironic because these are actually old issues he's dealing with, but they have resurfaced with a vengeance during his election cycle. These issues that he has are not brand new issues.
Absolutely.
He did recently become disbarred, but all this stuff that's blasted about him, we've been knowing about it for a couple of years at least now.
Hey, no, you're exactly right. But, when those things come to light, that's when they always seem to just mysteriously come to light at the worst possible time. You ever notice that? Yeah. Magically during the election, somehow all of your dirt seems to fly out of the closet.
And I don't think there's a whole lot of magic involved. And also, Robert, you and I both have worked for a few years to stop basically this regressive tax, which the Republican Public Service Commission, they are calling a fee for Lifeline phone users for the poorest people in the state of Georgia. I think it's a shame. I think it's a tragedy that we have, and not all of our public service commissioners who are Republicans voted for it. It was a 3-2 decision that now has approved the final implementation for this ridiculous and regressive tax, because that's what it is. Call it a fee all you want to. It's a tax on the poorest people in the state of Georgia. And Robert, I want you and I to continue to work together, because now I think we need to push for legislation.
You are exactly right, because that's the next step. That after activism, after you get people excited, once you get people out there and working, once you get people understanding the issue, that's when you have to legislate. And that's what a lot of people don't understand is that what set Dr. King apart from many of the other civil rights leaders was his ability to pass legislation to get their agenda written into stone so that it would last. So I think that is the next step in this battle, getting legislation written. And that's something that we're going to talk to Georgia Korn about getting legislation written to basically prevent the Public Service Commission from being able to do this currently and in the future. If you think about it, you have 3 rich, fat, white guys sitting at the Public Service Commission who are able to vote to take away phone service for nearly 1 million people. It just doesn't make sense. It's not a body built for decisions like that. So we're going to be talking about that with Georgia Korn. So I think we have a great show set up. So we want you to be safe on those roads traveling, because we know it's rainy and how things get in Georgia when it starts raining.
I know that's right, man. Well, listen, I'm going to be tuning in. Robert, I appreciate you. Appreciate all you do. Listeners, we appreciate you. And thank you guys for staying tuned in to Love 860 on Present Politics with Rashad Ritchie and Robert Patillo.
Thanks so much, Rashad. Be safe.
Thanks.
All right. Well, we're going to turn directly and dovetail directly into this issue of the Lifeline phone service. We touched on it shortly last week, and that's why we want to hit on it again now, because we've had more developments. For those of you who haven't tuned in previously, what the issue is that the Georgia Public Service Commission, which is 5 Republicans, have proposed and decided and passed last week a new measure that would charge $5 on top of a free federal program, which is the Lifeline phone program. The Lifeline phone program was created in 1984 under President Reagan. The intention of the program is to provide originally was to provide home phone service to low-income individuals, elderly people on fixed incomes, military veterans, people who are unable to work, so that they would have access to medical treatment, to jobs, to education, to family. And so the way it's paid for is what's called a universal service charge, which if you look on your cell phone bill or on your home phone bill is maybe $1.25 each month out of your phone bill. So this program has been in place for nearly 30 years now. In 2005, this program was expanded under President Bush to include cellular phone service. And what it does is provide 250 minutes to phone users, 1 per household, under the same criteria. Any individuals who are on public assistance who live below the poverty line. The rationale being the same, that because so many people are transient now, no longer have home phone service, no longer have homes to be at, the best way to provide the service is through mobile carriers. So the carriers provide this service with 250 free minutes to individuals, and in return, the federal government pays the phone companies $9 a month as a subsidy to provide the service. Again, this is paid for by the same universal service charge. What the Public Service Commission decided was that they didn't want users of this free federal program in Georgia to have access to it. So they've passed a bill that will charge $5 to each user per month. The $5 doesn't go back to the taxpayers of Georgia. It doesn't go to the state of Georgia. It doesn't go to the federal government. It goes to the telecommunications companies. Now, see if that makes any sense to you, that poor people, some of which I spoke to many living in homeless shelters, elderly people living in senior high-rises, people on fixed incomes, they need to scrounge around to get $5 to send to the telecommunications company. So the telecommunications companies will now be getting $9 from Uncle Sam from the federal government, and then $5 on top of that from each user in the state of Georgia. Now, the reasoning for this, according to Commissioner Everett, was Commissioner Everett feels, and a majority of the commissioners felt, that cellular phone service is a luxury. You don't need it. What you need it for? Who you going to call? What you going to do? You don't need your 250 minutes while you sit around in your government welfare Cadillac, eating your government-provided filet mignon, giving your, this is their view of the poor. This is their view of individuals. They simply put, we shouldn't be providing these people with this luxury of having cell phone service. Now, when I went over to the Gateway Center, spoke with individuals there. Gateway Center is a homeless shelter here in Atlanta. Many of them explained to me that these Lifeline phones were the absolute only way they had to contact potential employers. Even if they applied for jobs, how would they get in contact with them without the Lifeline phones? It's not a situation where, like it was in 1984 under Reagan, where there were payphones all around that you can call people at. There aren't office phones or home phones, and if you don't have a home to live in, if you're living in a shelter, then there's no way for you to use the Lifeline home phone service. So pretty much what Commissioner Everett is doing is punishing poor people for the simple fact of being poor. You're too broke to have a home, so you don't deserve a home phone, and you're too broke to have $5, so you don't deserve a free phone. And the most insane part about this whole thing is this bill or this measure is not going to save the people of Georgia a penny. Not one red cent, because it's a federal program. So anything that comes out of the system is administered by the federal government. So it doesn't save Georgia taxpayers any money. That same universal service charge on your phone bill is going to be exactly the same, whether the $5 is there or not. So the secondary reason that they gave for wanting to take away this program or charge the $5 fee is they claimed that there was corruption, there was rent seeking, there was duplication in the system. People were getting 3, 4, 5 cell phones, using them instead of just one. And they were correct about this. As any of us have seen with anything that's free, people can't simply stick their hand in the cookie jar one time. They got to keep going back and back and back. So people were definitely getting far too many of these phones. But because of that, the Federal Communications Commission 2 years ago actually started cracking down, and they cut the number of Lifeline phones in Georgia from 1.8 million all the way down to about 700,000, which it currently is at. They did this by cross-checking databases. They did this by ensuring that that individuals had to provide more verification in order to qualify for the phones. And they also put the onus on the telecommunications companies to comb their databases to ensure that it was one phone per household. So this issue has already been addressed from the federal level. So that brings us down to what the true reason is. It's not an economic argument, clearly, because if the economic argument is let these people have phones so they can get jobs and get back into the economy and pull themselves out of poverty. It's not a jobs issue, because on the jobs front, by charging this fee, you're going to be hurting the companies that provide the service. Therefore, they're going to have fewer employees in the state. And if they have fewer employees in the state, those are going to be more people looking for work. It's not a fiscally conservative argument, because we're not saving the government any money. We're not going to be cutting the deficit or reducing taxes. We're not reducing your universal service charge. There won't be any additional money in your pocket out of this. We're actually taking money from the people and giving it to big corporations. And it's not a small government argument, because it is the definition of big government charging people a fee for not providing any additional service just because they feel like it. And that's what it is. They just feel like poor people shouldn't have these things. It's just like in Georgia, we have a drug testing for food stamps bill that passed a couple years ago, which says that in order to receive public assistance or food stamps, you have to be drug tested first. Now, I don't know. I remember when this bill passed, I don't know what your mom being a weed head has to do with whether or not children get to eat food. But this is the same logic that, they feel they have that same, I don't even know if you can call it socially conservative view, because it's not socially conservative, because social conservatives believe in helping one another. They believe in the Christian viewpoint of help the least of these. The only thing I can think of is just based on pure evil and spite. I don't want you poor people to have a phone because you shouldn't have it. And if you want it, go work for it. And no, you can't work for it because you don't have a phone to get a job. It's the most nonsensical thing I think the state has passed in at least 2 or 3 years. We're about to throw the break, and we're going to continue on this topic in the next segment. We're going to have Georgia Korn call in about 4:30. You're listening to President Politics Live on WAEC Love 860 AM. Remember, call in 404-355-8699.
The lawyers of Johnson, Hopewell, Coleman offer the quality, experience, and expertise of a big firm, but with the personalized, client-centered approach to legal services that only a smaller firm can offer. Practice areas include personal injury, auto accidents, slip and fall, and negligent security, plus on-the-job injury, bankruptcy, family law, business and corporate law, wills and estates, and charter schools. Call today to see why Johnson, Hopewell, Coleman should be your one-stop law shop for all of your business and personal needs. Conveniently located in Decatur, within 5 miles of both 285 and I-20. Call and schedule an appointment right now. 404-289-2244. 404-289-2244. Or go online to jhclawyers.com. The hiring of an attorney is an important decision that should not be based solely upon advertising. Ask for free written information about the firm's qualifications and experience.
Middle Georgia Productions and ATL Radio presents Rimshot Urban Musical, nominated ATL's Hottest Stage Play 2013. Rimshot Urban Musical integrates the works of a dynamic group of positive and innovative musicians, artists, scribes, and dancers while conveying an engaging, educational, and stimulating message. How far would you be willing to go for fame? Fortune. Things aren't always what they seem. The highly anticipated Rimshot Anniversary Celebration is on November 23rd at 7 o'clock at the Rockdale County Auditorium in Conyers, Georgia. To secure your tickets today, visit www.rimshoturbanmusical.com. Follow the movement on Facebook at Rimshot Urban Musical or call us at 678-306-3616. Rimshot Urban Musical, performing arts for social change.
Good afternoon. Happy Saturday. Welcome back to Present Politics on WAEC Love 860 AM. Remember, call-in numbers 404-355-8699. Remember, we're talking about this issue of the Lifeline phones, and the Public Service Commission of Georgia decided to charge an additional $5 fee on a free federal program. On the line, we have Antonio from Atlanta. Antonio, are you there?
Yes, Sam. How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
He woke me up again. I'm not complaining about anything, but I'm going to talk a little bit about this. The politics of America, not so much as specific. However, it shows the character of the situation we've been in for the last 400 years or so. Even when you get to the Tea Parties, when you get to the specifics of Obamacare, it is a group of people that have and prospered, and however they manipulated the politics of how they prospered, we've been lulled into a position with these people, and we're dependent on them generally. And it's not just black people, the underprivileged, the poor of this land. And it seems so systematically prophetic. I would go to, I think it's, I want to say Isaiah. There'll be those who would write grievousness against you, which is of their own imagination. And it seems that we're getting more and more political, but we're losing prophets. Are all of our prophets becoming politicians? Because there's some specific instructions in Scripture that say, hey, come out from amongst these things. And if these are connected to these things, there is an avenue that we're not taking that I don't know if you would call it political, but or you might even call it anti-political. I just like to see where a political program coins in on the fact that we're trying to politically correct something that God's kind of saying, well, I don't even want you to get involved with that. I've given you instructions. I've told you there'll be another government down there for people who do not have law. Now, as far as I can remember, His laws are written in our hearts and in our minds. You can go to Jeremiah or you can go to Hebrews to find that out. So I'm wondering where our politicians or where our prophets are that are saying, wait a minute, maybe it is time we paid attention to what the Word's saying and stop falling into the trap of buying into every dilemma they orchestrate for us.
And I agree completely with that. You make great points, because we're in a place now where we don't have political courage. We have individuals who are in elected office who got there not based off of doing the right thing, not based off of supporting what's popular, supporting what's for the people, but what's on the side of corporate interest. I guarantee, especially on this lifeline issue that we're talking about now, we're going to have to follow the money on it because, as I said, the politics just don't make sense. Why would you want to take a program away from poor people just because? Not based on any logic.
Sense. Okay, now let me say this. The politics makes sense because the prophecy is real. But we can look at the prophecy and say, what on earth? What people would come up and just decide to make rules up to oppress a people? How many men, especially black men, are in prison right now for driving a car?
You're right.
I call jail prison. How many different statutory situations do we have to lose our children to before we say, wait a minute, how do we actually come out from amongst them? Now, there are all types of know the Constitution remedies, so to speak, but is that what we're leaving ourselves with? I'm all for what God said. I'm a little concerned as to how he's going to manifest it, but I'm pretty sure he's going to use us. Every time he's done something in the Bible, he's used his people to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's all I'd like to say right now. I'm going to listen for a while. I appreciate you taking the call.
All right. Well, thank you so much for calling in. And this is something that I definitely think that we should delve into in this an election year, because my theory on this, my gut feeling is that the only reason for this was Republican Party politics. It had nothing to do with the black folks who it affects. It had to do with Republicans in South Georgia and outside of the city of Atlanta. Those Tea Party conservatives who, anytime you stick it to the poor, it makes a good election issue. So when these public service commissioners have to go back in front of their voters for the Republican primary, they can say, yes, I voted to stop these poor folks from taking money out of your pocket, whether it makes sense or not. Because as we said, this $5 fee isn't going to have anything, not one thing to do with the universal service charge on your phones. So it's not saving you any money. It's not a fiscally conservative thing to do. It's not a prudent thing to do. The entire purpose of this is just so they can go back to their conservative base and say, we stuck it to those poor folks. We stuck it to those black folks up there in Atlanta who are taking all your money, sticking it in their pockets and sitting around doing nothing. Because that's their ideology. That's what this issue is really about. If the face of this issue was white grandmothers in rural Georgia or veterans coming home from war, then this wouldn't be an issue. There's no way that they would be able to have this vote in the Public Service Commission. But because this program is seen as being the federal government, specifically Obama. Remember, this program has been around since the Reagan administration. It was expanded during the Bush administration, but somehow they call it the Obama phone program. What kind of sense does that make? The program was in place for 20 years before President Obama got into office, but they call it Obama phone. Why? Because they see it as just another case of President Obama giving a big giveaway to his base of poor black folks who are just sitting around sopping up all the money from these rich people, stealing their tax dollars, taking money out of their back pocket so that they don't have to work. That's the way that they see it. It's class warfare. It's the worst form of bigotry and prejudice because it's bigotry and prejudice written into law. This is the 21st century legal manifestation of Jim Crow. That's what we're dealing with now. And so when these decisions are made literally behind closed doors, because the Public Service Commission, even though they're an elected body, they're not like the House of Representatives. They're not like the state Senate or the state legislature. It's 5 guys in a room full of lobbyists. If you walk in, you're going to feel really strange. I've been in there. You're the only person not wearing a $2,000 Armani suit. You're the only car in the parking lot that isn't a 2014 BMW, Mercedes, Infinity. You know, when my little putt-putt car pulls up, I just got to hide it in the back somewhere because all the lobbyists are sitting there with their big bodies. So those are the people who make these decisions. Those are the ones who finance these campaigns. And they're the ones who have the final say on whether or not your grandmother gets to have phone service at her house, or she's going to have to figure out a way on a fixed income to choose between food, medicine, transportation, or a free phone. But that doesn't matter to them. That doesn't play well in a Republican primary. And this is the funniest thing that I've noticed working. I know Rashad could comment on this too if he calls back in. But working in primaries around the state, around the state of Georgia and around the country. It's interesting because some of the most conservative districts are the districts that rely the most on public assistance. You're talking about people who are on food stamps, on welfare, on VA benefits, Social Security benefits. They need every program, all program the federal government provides, because the jobs have left and gone overseas. Those little rural factory towns that used to exist, where you made carpet, or you made hairbrushes or whatever else. Those jobs are in Mexico now. Those jobs are in China. They're in Taiwan. So you have these communities that are completely based on government assistance, and they're the most quote unquote conservative, Tea Party, Confederate flag flying people in the state. It makes no sense. It's completely antithetical. But then again, what in politics has made sense recently? So what are we going to do about this Lifeline issue? What are we going to do to restore this phone service? Because any of you who have followed me and have seen me, y'all know that I don't give up on fights this easily. I don't say, well, they made their decision, let's go find the next thing to do. Guess it's over. So I think what this is going to require is going to be legislation. That's the only thing that we can do to override this Public Service Commission vote. There's a litigation working its way through the court system now. There's definite questions as to whether or not the Public Service Commission even has the power to issue this kind of ruling. Because when you think about it, if the Public Service Commission of Georgia told Verizon or AT&T that for your unlimited internet plan, they couldn't charge you $100 a month, they had to charge you $105 a month, and that's what everyone had to charge, that's not legal. That's rate fixing. But because that's for regular people's phone, they can't do that. But when you're dealing with poor people's phones, then they can do whatever they feel like. So there's a court case working its way through on that. There's also a question of preemption, which is that when the federal government sets something, the state government doesn't actually have the power to override it. Just as, the federal speed limit is 70 miles an hour. So Atlanta or Georgia or Mississippi can't say, well, y'all say 70, but we're going to say it's 95 miles per hour in our state. You can't do that because of the Commerce Clause. So there's a definite question of whether or not this law is even constitutional, because if the federal government has set it to be free, then the state government can't come back behind them and say, well, no, it's $5. Also, there's the question of taxation or undue taxation, because regardless of what you can call it a fee, but it's a tax. It's the government taking money from you. But the difference is, this is the government taking money from you for nothing. It's different than something like a toll. If you pay a toll to get on a bridge, you're paying that toll to get on the bridge. If you pay a fee to get paperwork filed, you're paying a fee and getting the paperwork filed. Here, you're getting nothing. You already have the free phone. So the government wants to charge you money for something that's free. Do you know what it's called when you take money from somebody and give them nothing back in return involuntarily? That's called theft. That's called getting robbed. You got jacked. That's what the Public Service Commission is going to do. They're coming to your house. They're shaking you down. They're saying, do you want the free phone in your pocket? Yes, I have it. Good. Give me $5. I will give you nothing else in return. And I can't think of another law like that. Could you imagine if the police just pulled you over and just said, give me $5? And you said, for what? Because I want it. That's why. That's, in a sense, that is what the Public Service Commission is doing. They are shaking poor people down. They're shaking old people down. So there are cases working their way through the court system that are challenging this. But I think what we really are going to need is state-level legislation here in Georgia that will prevent the Public Service Commission from being able to pass this and repeal this bill. It needs to be passed this session. It needs to be passed in January here in Georgia. And we're going to get to this. We're going to throw the break really quickly. We're going to come back with Georgia Korn. You're listening to Present Politics on Love 860 AM WAEC. For call-in numbers 404-355-8699. Also, you can follow us online, www.presentpolitics.com.
The The lawyers of Johnson, Hopewell, Coleman offer the quality, experience, and expertise of a big firm, but with the personalized, client-centered approach to legal services that only a smaller firm can offer. Practice areas include personal injury, auto accidents, slip and fall, and negligent security, plus on-the-job injury, bankruptcy, family law, business and corporate law, wills and estates, and charter schools. Call today to see why Johnson, Hopewell, Coleman should be your one-stop law shop for all of your business and personal needs. Conveniently located in Decatur, within 5 miles of both 285 and I-20. Call and schedule an appointment right now. 404-289-2244. 404-289-2244. Or go online to jhclawyers.com. The hiring of an attorney is an important decision that should not be based solely upon advertising. Ask for free written information about the firm's qualifications and experience.
Think the IRS can't send you to prison?
Hi, I'm Richard Hatch. The IRS sends people to prison, and they're not just celebrities. If you owe the IRS over $10,000, call for your free tax consultation right now. Listen, I went to prison for over 4 years, and you don't want to. Don't wait. Call now.
Can the IRS throw me in jail for not filing my tax returns?
I don't want to go to jail for not filing my tax returns.
If you owe over $10,000, call now 800-525-1716. 800-525-1716.
Believe me, I know the IRS may be harassing you at work or sending threatening letters to your home. If you have unfiled tax returns or need any IRS help, call today for your free and private tax consultation. Even though interest and penalties add up, you can be an IRS survivor.
Be an IRS tax survivor. Call 800-525-1716. 800-525-1716. 800-525-1716. Paid spokesperson. Go to IRSTaxSurvivor.com for disclaimer.
Jay Farner here from Quicken Loans. We get a lot of tweets from folks that sound just like this. Jay, I bought my home in 2007. Since then, it's gone down in value. Now I owe more on my mortgage than my home is worth. Can I refinance? The answer may very well be yes. Recently, the government announced changes that may allow folks to refinance even if their home has lost value. For example, if you owe $300,000 on your mortgage, but your home's only worth $150,000, Quicken Loans may still be able to help you. Or if your current mortgage rate is higher than 3.99%, you've got to give us a call today at 800-QUICKEN. And for 3 years in a row now, J.D. Power & Associates has ranked Quicken Loans highest in the nation in customer satisfaction for primary mortgage origination. So, if your current mortgage is higher than 3.99%, or if you owe more than your home is worth, call Quicken Loans today at 800-QUICKEN or go to QuickenLoans.com.
For J.D. Power & Associates award information, visit jdpower.com. Important terms and conditions apply. Calls for cost information. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states and MLS number 3030.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Present Politics live on Love 860 AM WAEC. Call the number of 404-355-8699. Thank you so much for listening. And for all of you listening who are active in our social media rooms, who are active in sending us questions, call in. We want to hear your voices on radio. Michelle, listening from Sandy Springs, wants you to call in. Nia Colton, Renetta, we need you to go ahead and call in. Come on. So Nina asked, during the shutdown, gas prices were $3.14. Now they're $3.29. Give us some insight as to why gas has skyrocketed as a result of the government resolution, or is that a separate matter? As most of you know, most things in our economy are interconnected. Most things in our economy have some connection to each other. During the shutdown, there was uncertainty in the market. Therefore, gas prices were depressed. People weren't traveling. People weren't spending money going back and forth to work. Therefore, gas prices were reduced. Now that there's a resolution, there's a little more clarity in the market. People are back to work. Therefore, gas prices have rebounded as a result. So, Netta, that is the reason for the increase in gas prices since the end of the shutdown. We're going to go back to our topic of the Lifeline phone for one more segment. We're still waiting on our guest, George, to call in. Oh, there goes George calling in right there. George, are you there?
I'm here. Hi, Robert.
Hey, George. George, can you give our audience a little background on yourself?
Sure. I've worked with. I'm a professor at Ohio University School of Media Arts and Studies, and also a media producer and communication consultant. I've worked with Reverend Jesse Jackson since the late 90s on policy issues and media work, and I've been involved in the Lifeline issue now for about 2 years with the reforms at the FCC and also what's going on now down in Georgia.
And it was great to have your leadership on this issue, your understanding. Now, I gave a brief summary, brief outline on the issue. Could you kind of give the audience a little more information on the Lifeline issue?
Sure. Just to go back a little bit, we hear this all the time referred to as Obama phones in kind of a derogatory manner. But, in truth, the program actually started during the Reagan administration. And it's really just subsidy, a $9.25 subsidy that is paid for out of the Universal Service Fund, which everyone who has a phone, a cell phone, pays into, or any kind of telephone. You pay into the Universal Service Fund every month when you pay your phone bill, and it goes to a lot of different things. It goes to Lifeline, it goes to funding internet connections for libraries and schools. It goes into getting phone service to remote areas. So there's a lot of good that comes from that very small fee, and Lifeline is one of the programs. So it started during the Reagan administration as a $9.25 subsidy to help low-income people afford phone service, which has always been a goal in this country. Universal access to communication service is a basic principle, because we realize that in a democracy, people need to be connected, they need to get information, they need to be able to participate. And so that was always a national goal. And so it was for hardline telephones until Katrina. When Katrina happened, the cell phone companies got together and said, you know what, we can help get phones to people very quickly, and for $9.25 for the subsidy that you pay to subsidize phone service, we can actually give people a phone and 250 minutes a month and still make a little bit of money on that $9.25. And so it was a business decision. The government never said, give out a free phone. It was companies that said, hey, we can do this. And it was basically in response to Katrina, and then it continued after that. We can put a phone in people's hands, low-income people who qualify, and give them 250 minutes a month and still make some money, make a profit. And so that's what's been going on. Now, the problem happened when some companies became overzealous, and some customers here and there. But the companies, certain companies, again, there's some bad apples in the group who just to get that subsidy were giving out phones fairly indiscriminately. And the FCC got on that. They spent 2 years reforming the program. And it's now, the reforms are taking place. In fact, by the beginning of the year, there's going to be a database that weeds out anyone who has a duplicate phone. Then they're going to have a verification database sometime next year that will verify people's qualifications. So the any fraud in the system is being weeded out. The FCC has seen to that. In fact, some of the steps that have been taken early in this year have already led to over $128 million in savings in the program. So that gets us to Georgia. So now the Public Service Commission, led by, and this is really an issue, it has been an issue championed by Commissioner Everett, has wanted to put a $5 fee on Lifeline service to low-income folks, having them pay the fee. The companies don't want the fee. The fee is going to no particular purpose other than into the pockets of the phone providers. And he somehow thinks this is going to cut down on some kind of fraud that he never documented, really, in terms of what's going on in Georgia. So we have this fee the companies don't want. It has no purpose, and it's just going to be a burden on low-income folks. As we know, most low-income folks are unbanked, so they're going to have to get money orders to send in a $5 fee. And many of them are going to have to choose between a prescription and a phone, or between a meal and a phone. And it just seems like an unnecessary burden when the companies don't want it. It's addressing no fraud issues, and it's really going to serve no useful purpose. So it was a 3-2 vote. I have to say that a couple of commissioners really saw the value of the program. They understand there have been problems with it, but they, too, took the reasonable position that a $5 fee isn't going to address those problems, and the FCC now has them well in hand. So you know, at this point, the fee has passed. It's supposed to go into effect at the end of January. It was a 3-2 vote. And we're going to see if we can organize between now and then and do something about that. So that, I'm sorry I went on a little bit, but that's the history, the background, and where we stand right now.
All right, it's interesting because sitting on the Lifeline hearings, it sounds like the telecommunications industry is taking this this bill rather seriously. Can you kind of talk? I mentioned briefly the tenuous legality of this fee. Can you kind of mention some of the arguments they've made regarding whether or not the Public Service Commission even has the power to institute a fee like this?
Well, that's a good point. I think there is going to be some court action taking place fairly quickly, and that's a big question because there's the question that any tax. It depends what you call this. Is it a tax? Is it a fee? Is it a rate? If it's a rate, it should go through the rate-setting process. If it's a tax, only the legislature can impose a tax. So there are serious questions about the legality of even doing this, and to set a fee that goes directly into the pockets of business. What is the basis for that, and what is the legality of that? So, yes, there are several questions, and I think they are going to be tested fairly quickly in the courts.
And, that's one of the things that I think most people don't have the biggest question about. I can't think of any other fee that the state sets which forces you to pay a corporation money. I couldn't imagine the state of Georgia just coming to me and just randomly saying, you owe Georgia Power an extra $5 a month for nothing extra just because we feel like they should have it.
Exactly, and it's right. If you pay a dog licensing fee, somehow that's supposed to defray the cost of the dog wardens, or those. If you pay a driver's license fee, that's supposed to defray some expense of administering licenses. But there is no purpose to this fee, and it goes to private interest, which just seems a little unusual.
And this leads to the next step. So as we said, there's litigation taking place. There's also the push to hopefully have the Public Service Commission change their minds. If we get one commissioner to swing and see the light of day between now and the implementation in January, then we can get the fee reversed. It's not something set in stone, not something permanent. But I think, or continue.
No, exactly right. Exactly right. I was pleased that two of our commissioners really did, see the questions here. Well, none of us are for fraud. None of us are for waste, and they saw that, and they were reasonable. They said, if there are issues, let's document them, let's deal with them. But just a blanket $5 fee isn't going to get it. So it was a 3-2 vote, and I'm optimistic that if we keep making our case, we may be able to make some change before the end of January.
And that's one of the great things that because it was a 3-2 vote and not a unanimous vote, it does seem like additional public pressure by getting more people involved, more people activated on this. You saw, and I think many people saw, the amount of media attention that was placed on this issue. I was just doing a search this morning, and it looks like this issue made the newspapers in Kansas City, Missouri, made the newspaper in Indiana. It was on the news in Texas. It's becoming a national issue, and the more people we mobilize on, the more we'll be able to put pressure on the Public Service Commission to change this rule, because it doesn't make sense. But on this legislative front, I think that might be the primary place that we can get traction, simply because it is an election year, and this is a great issue for Democrats. It's also a great issue for some Republicans, depending on the district.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been, having some beginning conversations, as you know, on that very effort, and I think you're right. I'm just starting to explore, the options there. But I think if folks in the State House begin to focus in on this could be a good way to address this in a very efficient and in a quick manner, without, the courts are going to drag on. if we can take this straight to the legislature, that'd be fantastic.
And, I've talked to some elected officials here in Georgia, and one of the more frightening things is just so many had no idea that it was happening, had no idea what was going on. They didn't hear about it until the public heard about it, until we started making noise about it. That's when a lot of our state representatives, state senators even found out it was an issue. So I think the more that we not only educate the public, but the more that we educate our elected officials, that's when we can really see a telecom reform bill take place that would eliminate the Public Service Commission's ability to regulate something like this, because it just does not make sense for 750,000 people to have their phone service affected by 3 individuals who are sitting on their moral high horse.
Exactly, and the fact that this is a federal program and the money comes into Georgia from the Universal Service Fund, and that Georgia really takes in more money from this than phone subscribers in Georgia pay out, and it costs the state absolutely nothing to run, and it is being reformed at the FCC level. There is really no reason, to mess with it. And the thing I pointed out at the hearing was, it's phone companies based in Georgia, many of them who are offering this, some from out of state, but many of them based in Georgia. So if we lose subscribers because of this fee, it's not only going to hurt poor people, it's going to hurt business people. And why would you make a decision that hurts businesses in Georgia when, again, there is no financial reason to impose this fee, and you have no administrative responsibility for the program? The program pretty much runs itself out of D.C.
Yeah, I think that this is will be a real opportunity for some of our elected officials here in Georgia to show some political courage, and not even that much political courage. Say they're standing up for poor people and old people and military veterans, and also for Republicans on the other side of the aisle to be able to say, we're stopping big government from extracting an additional fee out of the pockets of Georgians to be contributed back to the telecom companies. I think it's a win-win. I think this is a legislative action that has a great chance for bipartisan support and a great chance to pass here in the state.
Right, and kind of what you're saying. I've had access to letters from the companies and from testimony and hearings around the country, and we don't realize the impact this has on so many lives. I mean, and I've seen people receive these phones. RainbowPush partners with a company to get phones to people, and I've seen literally grandmothers crying because they have a phone now. I mean, some folks just are not sensitive to the plight of the truly low income folks out there, and it does become a choice between what can I do this month with the little bit of money I have, and just having this phone to stay connected makes a huge difference in people's lives. Plus, it helps with employment. We have this still terrible unemployment issue in this country. We have 40% of our households that have no discretionary income. These phones help people get connected, help them find jobs. Can you get a job if you can't be called back, after an interview? No, it's just impossible. So this is really, we kind of use the term, it's not a handout, it's a hand up. It's all of us helping those who are a little less fortunate get connected. And if we can turn this around, I'm on board with you, Robert.
All right. Well, thank you so much for calling in. We're about to throw the break. But George, is there any more information you want to give to listeners?
No, other than just stay tuned in on this, because we may be in the next month, next few weeks, calling for folks to join us. Possibly to make phone calls, possibly to write letters, possibly to come to rallies, just ways of keeping this on the forefront. So, I'll be in touch with you, and we'll be looking for people to get up to speed and help us with this issue.
All right. Thank you so much, George Korn, for calling in, everybody. We're going to break. You're listening to Present Politics live on Love 860 AM, WAEC, 404-355-8699. Thank you so much.
The lawyers of Johnson, Hopewell, Coleman offer the quality, experience, and expertise of a big firm, but with the personalized, client-centered approach to legal services that only a smaller firm can offer. Practice areas include personal injury, auto accidents, slip and fall, and negligent security, plus on-the-job injury, bankruptcy, family law, business and corporate law, wills and estates, and charter schools. Call today to see why Johnson, Hopewell, Coleman should be your one-stop law shop for all of your business and personal needs. Conveniently located in Decatur, within 5 miles of both 285 and I-20. Call and schedule an appointment right now. 404-289-2244. 404-289-2244. Or go online to jhclawyers.com. The hiring of an attorney is an important decision that should not be based solely upon advertising. Ask for free written information about the firm's qualifications and experience.
You see and hear ad after ad about owning gold, but they raise more questions than they answer. That's why American Bullion has created a comprehensive free gold guide packed with unbiased information about gold as an investment. Get the facts before you buy. Call American Bullion now for your free copy of the gold guide at 800-479-2177. That's 800-479-2177. Are you tired of stressing out about the economy and ready to take control of your retirement funds? American Bullion has a precise, tax-free, and hassle-free system to convert your existing IRA or former 401k into a gold IRA. That's why they're the leader in gold IRA rollovers. It's all spelled out in the free American Bullion Gold Guide that answers all of your questions in plain and simple English. Call for your free copy today at 800-479-2177. That's 800-479-2177. American Bullion. 800-479-2177.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Present Politics. I'm your host, Robert Patillo, live on Love 860 AM WAEC. Calling number is 404-355-8699. Just had a great interview. Georgia Korn. Want to turn to some of our callers. Joseph from South Atlanta. Joseph, are you there?
Yes. Hey, you're talking about the Lifeline phones. Now, I don't even have one of those. I don't get food stamps or anything. I'm homeless. And I go out, and I go to freaking Home Depots and Lowe's. Usually Home Depots, if I find them, they open at 6. I go in the morning at 5:30. When these people come in there waiting for them to open, I go walk up and tap on the door and say, any work for me today? And they always say no. But I got a post-it there with my name and my number on it. And a half a day's work is good, and I hand it to them, man. And that's how I make my living.
So many people are in that same boat that when you're in a situation where you need to make money, you have to stay in contact with people. You live in a situation where you're close enough to the Home Depot to walk there, but some people, they have to be called for jobs. They have to be able to locate where things are at. It's a hustle lifestyle, so you have to get out there and get things going. So I'm glad you called in to give people a real life example, because I think far too often people in decision-making positions, they see these things from a completely theoretical point of view. They see these things from sitting on a hill looking down on everyone else, as if these are just things that don't really happen. These are just things that are written on a report, but these are real life situations for people.
Oh, I agree. And it's not that, they offer me full-time jobs all the time, but I just like to wander around the country aimlessly. So that's what I do for a living. And these people, they don't know how to do this or anything. Still, they need the phone, man, because this is, 2013 now, man. People ain't going to come over your house and knock on your door.
Exactly. It's not like it was, like I said, 30 years ago, where you could go to a payphone, or where at this point in time, a cell phone is a necessity. The internet is a necessity. It's not something that you can live without. You can't advance in our society without it. So if you want people to move their way out of poverty, move their way into the middle class, then simply providing them with rudimentary phone service seems to be the least that we can do. And taking that away, as I said, the only thing that can justify it is just either pure evil or just spite. And that's, I think, what's motivating them.
Oh, and the free phones, they are the most rudimentary. They're old recycled phones that, 2G. They're starting to get some 3G phones out there, but still, Anyways, that's all I had to say. Thanks for talking with me.
All right. Well, thank you so much for calling in. Again, callers, you listen to President Politics, Love 860 AM. Call in 404-355-8699. Now, we wanted to change gears real quick. We've been talking about the Lifeline issue for most of the first hour. Want to get into some local politics. As I said, this is an election year. 2013, we have elections coming up in Atlanta. We have the mayor's race coming up next month. We have school board coming up. We have city council races, not just in Atlanta, but around the state. And as most of you know, the end of October, beginning of November is what we like to call crunch time. If your campaign is not kicking in full gear, if you don't have polls out there showing that you are either at or near the top of the race, if you don't have all your money raised and your people mobilized, you don't have your precinct captains and your yard signs out, you are behind the 8 ball and things are looking pretty bad for you right now. And if you are in a race where things are looking pretty bad, guess what you start doing? That's right, slinging mud. And that's where our good friend, City Councilman H, Lamar Willis, is at right now. Now, for those of you who don't know, Lamar Willis holds the citywide seat for the at-large city council seat in Atlanta. He's been going through hard times recently. We mentioned in the beginning of the show, but recently he was disbarred. He lost his law license, can no longer practice law in the state of Georgia. The state bar was able to show that he deposited, I think, $30,000 of his client's money in his own personal bank account. Because of this, he was disbarred, and he's facing a challenge from a man by the name of Andre Dickens. Andre is a former businessman who now works at Georgia Tech. He doesn't have any political experience. He's a political unknown. He has a $1 million bankruptcy in his past. His residency is questionable, but he's being supported by many in the Atlanta community. He's being supported by former Mayor Shirley Franklin. He has a better record at this point than Councilman Willis with the disbarment. And because of this, this fight it's escalating. It's turning uglier and uglier by the minute. So recently, Franklin, a former Mayor Shirley Franklin, directed a jab at Willis, where she said that it seems to me, if you're not honest, if you don't have high integrity, you don't hold yourself to ethical standards, it doesn't matter what your position is on anything. Whew. That's the former 2-term mayor of Atlanta, basically saying that H. Lamar Willis is unfit to hold office. Unfit to hold office because he doesn't have the ethical standards and high integrity needed to be a city council person in Atlanta. So Willis didn't take this laying down. Willis fired back. He said, "We didn't question her, Mayor Franklin's, ability to serve when her son's business left the city and the state owing millions of dollars. He also said Mayor Franklin's daughter was married to a drug trafficking murderer, and when that individual was given bond, he resided in Franklin's home." Woo! This turned into housewives up in here. These folks, they are slinging mud. They are fighting. And right now, it looks like it's going to be difficult for Willis to maintain this seat. Mayor Franklin further stated that his disbarment for stealing a client's money and his repeated unethical behavior are what disqualifies him from holding this seat. You see, folks, when you're driving on the highway, you see these yard signs. You are supposed to go home and look the people up. You're not supposed to just vote based on the pretty yard sign. Like, well, their yard sign is yellow and their yard sign is blue. My fraternity color is yellow, so I'm going to vote for the yellow dude. That's not how it works. The yard signs, the mail pieces, all those things are to give you reference points so that you can do further research into who you are voting for. I'm pretty sure none of this stuff was written on any of the yard signs you've seen or any of the billboards you've seen around the state or around the city. I'm pretty sure you won't find information like this sitting, sent to you in a mailer from the candidates. You have to do your own research. One of the biggest pet peeves of political consultants and candidates alike is that it's very difficult for people to learn about the individuals because they don't want to take that extra one step. And in the internet age, there's no excuse. In the age of computers, there is no excuse to not do your research and not find out who you're voting for. It only takes a couple minutes. Just type in someone's name. You can find out what their positions are, what they stand for, and what their record is. So if you say that you have a history of standing on the side of the poor, but when you look them up, none of that is true, then you know that this person's willing to say anything to get elected. When you're dealing with a situation like this where you have a city council person who was disbarred for stealing money, and then you're going to put them back on city council in charge of money. Oh, maybe you should rethink that. As I said, his competitor, Andre Dickens, is a political newcomer. So he's running on a clean slate. Maybe it's time to clean house. Maybe it's time to put someone in there who doesn't have a history, who will bring a fresh breath, new air, new ideas to the city council chamber. We have a lot of things going on in the city of Atlanta. We really don't need more council persons who have their own personal baggage, clouding their judgment, clouding their views. It's very difficult for a person to do public works while they're trying to figure out how they're going to pay their own bills. So that's why it's really important to look at someone's financial wherewithal, where their money comes from, what they're sitting on before electing them to office. Because when you're broke, somebody offering you a random bag of money to vote a certain way becomes a lot easier than if you're in a position where you can say no. So we're going to throw the break. We're going to come back with George Chidi, who is a candidate for city council for the city of Pine Lake. You're listening to Present Politics on WAEC Love 860 AM. Remember, our call number is 404-355-8699.
860 AM WAEC Atlanta.
The opinions expressed during the sponsored programs on this station are strictly those of the program hosts, guests, and callers and are not necessarily those of Beasley Broadcast Group, this station, its staff, other advertisers, or agencies. The lawyers of Johnson, Hopewell, Coleman offer the quality, experience, and expertise of a big firm, but with the personalized, client-centered approach to legal services that only a smaller firm can offer. Practice areas include personal injury, auto accidents, slip and fall, and negligent security, plus on-the-job injury, bankruptcy, family law, business and corporate law, wills and estates, and charter schools. Call today to see why Johnson, Hopewell, Coleman should be your one-stop law shop for all of your business and personal needs. Conveniently located in Decatur, within 5 miles of both 285 and I-20. Call and schedule an appointment right now. 404-289-2244. 404-289-2244. Or go online to jhclawyers.com. The hiring of an attorney is an important decision that should not be based solely upon advertising. Ask for free written information about the firm's qualifications and experience.
I think Ford service is great, but I wondered what a customer thought, so I snuck up on one.
How are you?
I'm Mike.
And I'm Jackie.
Jackie, tell me why somebody should bring their car to the Ford dealership for service instead of any one of those other places out there.
They have wonderful service.
What do you drive, Jackie?
2007 Ford Escape.
How many miles you got on it?
About 62,000 at the moment.
Okay, so how often do you find yourself here at the service center? Is it all about preventive maintenance at this point?
Yes, it is. I come and make sure I get my oil changed, and when they tell you your tires need to be rotated, you got to get that done as well.
Price is right?
Yes, price is right. No problem.
Let the experts help you get more life from your vehicle with the right battery at the right price. Right now, buy a high-performance Motorcraft Tested Tough Plus or Tested Tough Max battery and get a $25 mail-in rebate, only at your Ford dealer.
So you take care of your car?
Yes, I do.
Because you love your car?
Yeah, because if you take care of it, it'll take care of you.
Rebate by check. See participating Ford dealer or visit FordOwner.com for rebate details through 3/31/13.
You are listening to Atlanta's all-new inspirational talk radio, Love 860 WAEC, online at love860.com.
This is Present Politics, hosted by leading political strategist Rashad Ritchie and civil rights attorney Robert Patillo. Listen as they interview trendsetters and newsmakers, both local and national. This is our time to talk about political issues that matter to us. Guaranteed to be controversial and always informative. Join us every Saturday from 4 to 6 p.m. only on Love 860 WAEC, Atlanta's inspirational talk radio. You can also listen online at presentpolitics.com.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Present Politics, live on Love 860 AM WAEC. Caller number 404-355-8699. We're talking about local politics now here in the city of Atlanta and surrounding area. And we have on the phone one of my good friends, former reporter, activist, community leader, advocate, Mr. George Chidi. George, are you there?
I am. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Yourself?
I'm fine. It's been a good day.
Oh, well, thank you so much for calling in. I know you have a busy Saturday. You have the family going on and everything. So thanks for taking a couple minutes out to tune in to Present Politics and call in.
Happy to do it.
All right. Now, I know you're running out in Pine Lakes, right?
I am. I got drafted.
I know. I've been trying to draft you for years. So how did you end up getting drafted?
Well, the mayor, and I'm paraphrasing here, our mayor, Kathy Denaberga, basically looked at me at a breakfast one morning and said, "You put your man panties on," unquote, and run. Because I was telling her, like, look, it's a more difficult job than people give it credit for. I mean, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny little town. It's all of 700 people. But, if you've got a budget, you've got to manage it. If you've got to have a managed budget, you've got to have people willing to sit around in meetings and talk to people and be, leaders. There's a lot going on in the world, and it's hard to make the time. But when people ask you to do it, you do it.
You're absolutely right. I've been in that position before where people ask you and they tell you how great of a job, how great you'll do at the job. So how's the campaign life been treating you?
Well, again, like we're talking about a community with only about 250 houses in it. So campaigning is me sort of going door to door and going, "Hi, here I am. Oh, you? Okay, fine. What else you got?" The funny thing is, though, that our issues that are fairly, it's more than just Pine Lake stuff. Let me put this out here. Pine Lake has got a reputation as a speed trap. There are a lot of tiny towns in DeKalb County and also Fulton County that have, a reputation. You don't drive through them fast or the cops are going to stop you and you're going to end up getting a ticket or going to jail. Pine Lake's been wrestling with this for a generation now. The city's done a lot to, curb that. You're not more likely to get a ticket here than anywhere else, but there's tension, and there's tension between the city and the surrounding community, and it's hard to manage. Here's the thing. A week or so ago, a shop owner runs American Package Store was killed. It was a terrible crime. A shoplifter was trying to steal a $15 bottle of vodka, and the shop owner's wife locked the door using the automatic lock, and the store owner confronted him. The store owner got decked, fell, hit his head on the concrete floor, and died 3 days later.
Wow.
I mean, it's tragic. It's tragic all around. So here I am, and let me put my sort of emotionless policy hat on for a moment. Here I am going, we really need to change the reputation of Pine Lake to make it more friendly to the community. And that, to me, means pulling back on police, the visibility of the police. And tickets are down, but I'm saying pull way, way back and be much more friendly and much less, to have much less of a police orientation to the surrounding world. And then some terrible crime like this happens, and me telling my neighbors, look, we should have fewer, we should cut cop hours. You just can't do that. It becomes much more difficult to make the, sane policy decisions when you have a terribly emotionally tragic event that draws everybody's attention.
And you're completely right about that, because sometimes the macro view of policy is is hard to get across when you're talking about micro or instant events such as that, because that was actually the first time I heard of the city of Pine Lake when that happened a few weeks back. I was watching the news, and then a couple of days later I found out you were running. But what do you think the city should do to kind of balance that, to balance the view of being a speed trap, or being somewhere that people should stay away from, versus the need for public safety?
Well, part of this is just outreach. Pine Lake is, let me address this more broadly, because it's not just Pine Lake. It's definitely not just Pine Lake. It's all of the other new communities that are popping up in DeKalb County. Pine Lake is an old incorporated city, and I mean, it's 70 years old, but DeKalb has had a wave of incorporations. From Brookside, Brookhaven, and there's Lakeside that's being proposed, and Dunwoody, and all the rest of it. There's a closing off that happens unless you are working very hard to avoid it. There's a closing off where it's like, well, it's Dunwoody, so we don't have to care about the rest of the county. We don't have to care about the rest of the community. We're forming our city, and we're going to keep to our own. And the problem is that, a lot of things around here just don't work when people aren't communicating with one another and approaching problems, with some sense of teamwork. I think Pine Lake's gone. I think Pine Lake has been closed off in a way that isn't healthy. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to talk to the community around here and make sure that everybody is, that the friendliness of Pine Lake comes through, because I just don't think it has been. But this is a problem that other communities have too. Avondale's got a reputation for that. Clarkston less so. Clarkston has been very inviting, although there's been some tension, over the longer term because of sort of demographic changes that have gone on there. But this closing off, it's easy in this sort of wave of incorporations that the county's looking at to want to hunker down and say, well, we'll just take care of our own, and that's counterproductive in the long term.
And, I think that's one of those unintended consequences of all the recent municipal incorporations. Because you remember, up until 2005, Georgia hadn't created a new city in something like 50 years. But after the creation of, Sandy Springs and Johns Creek and Dunwoody, and now it seems like a new city pops up every year, and they seem to have the attitude of, well, we are here, we're new, we have escaped all the rest of you, and so we're going to keep on to yourself. That's kind of what you're talking about?
Yes, that's exactly it. Folks in Brookhaven are like, well, the county's broken, so we're just going to form our own police department and form our own this and that and the other thing, and, it'll be local control, and it'll be great. And, we won't have to worry about what's going on in South DeKalb. And then, they're discovering that they really can't run a city any better than the county was running the county. You can see it in the taxes.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works, that people, for some reason from the outside, it seems so simple the answers are. But then when you get in charge, you realize that the same set of problems still exist for you as they did for the other people. And for some reason, the same solutions seem to keep appearing.
Exactly right. The same solutions. Well, we'll close off. We'll do our own thing. And over the long term, it's counterproductive. I really think so. At least, and certainly it is here. Financially, it's devastating. You're going to end up taxed by two different communities, and you're going to have a little less say in both because of the way the politics work.
So what do you think the biggest changes you're going to do when you're on council are going to be? What are going to be some of your big initiatives?
Well, look, again, Pine Lake is tiny. Our budget is all of $833,000 a year. So I'm looking at some really small stuff here. I mean, I'm talking about getting the phone system fixed so that our contract with AT&T is going to be smaller, and getting repairs done to the lake house. The bigger thing is, like I'm saying, just reaching out to the community around us. We're surrounded. Pine Lake's demographics are very different from the demographics of the immediate area around it. Pine Lake's about 70% white, and we are surrounded by a community that is about 80% black. So I imagine part of the problem has been sort of communication. There's frankly, there could be problems when a white community and a black community in this part of the world needs to talk to one another. It's fraught unless people are really trying hard. Very frustrating. So I'm hoping to essentially be an ambassador there. In terms of policy, I'm one of 5 people, so it's not that there's a whole lot that I'm going to be able to say, do this, other than fix the phone system. I'm a bit more concerned about sort of longer term issues. By the way, I've got some news to break for you.
Okay, great.
I have some local news to break for you. I was at a DeKalb County Democrats meeting earlier this morning. There's a breakfast that they hold once a month, and there were state level legislators, not state, but state rep there. Forgive me, I've forgotten her name. I'm about to look it up. The discussion this morning was about incorporations, about how the powers that be should manage the messaging around the incorporation of Lakeside and the incorporation, the proposed incorporation of Stonecrest and Tucker. And it looks like the delegation from DeKalb is looking to form some sort of organization to raise money and then put out a campaign to oppose the incorporations formally. It's all very nebulous at this point. The specifics about who's going to be running the campaign or who's going to be raising money and which members of the delegation are going to be most involved, pointedly not clear yet. They're still working out the details, but that's the direction they're going right now. They want to. It's hard to fight if you want to fight the incorporation of Lakeside or you want to fight the incorporation of Stonecrest. It's hard to do it piecemeal. They want to have a unified campaign with a single message.
Now, why do you think this is? Why do you think, after so many recent incorporations, why do you think this appears to be the stopping point?
I think partly because there's going to be a whole lot left for the county. Commissioner Johnson was speaking, and he said that if any of the proposed incorporations go forward from this point forward, it will throw the county into a state of financial deficit. That the difference between deficit and breaking even is the loss of county revenue associated with an incorporation.
Wow. So pretty much we've gotten to that tipping point where finally we're realizing that creating all these little niche cities, every time 5 houses get together, they can't decide to be a new city. We finally realize that might not be the best idea.
Right. That looks like it, and it's not such. It looks like the delegation has sort of said that they want to put a stake in the ground and say this far and no more. Now, whether or not they'll be successful is something else. I mean, none of them, I shouldn't say none of them, those that I have spoken to have been careful to not step on the concept of self-determination. I mean, look, if a group of people want to incorporate and they can pull it off, there's something anti-democratic about saying, no, you can't do that. Because who the heck are you to say we can't be a city if there are enough people who say that they want it? The question is whether or not the purposes for forming the cities are, going to be fulfilled by, forming a city. I mean, one has to ask oneself why. Why are the incorporations happening at all?
It's right.
I'll ask you.
You know what? I've always thought the big part of it was the interest of I'll say racial interest, as specifically with Fulton County, because I remember when the incorporations first started, a big part of it was that the North Fulton jurisdictions did not want to be ruled by the majority or supermajority black Fulton County Commission or the Atlanta City Council. They felt that they weren't getting enough say and weren't able to pass their own rules. So I think that's always a large part of why there's so many of these municipal incorporations. Also, there's the there's a lot of hubris in it, where people think, well, this county's having all these problems. Clearly, if we just have our own small jurisdiction, we can cure all these issues on our own without having to go through all the bureaucracy and corruption of the county. So I think those are two of the big contributing factors. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think you've landed on some of it there. I'm hesitant to say race is at the center of it, but I'm not. But I think it's part of it. What comes up as I talk to people, and I talk to people a lot about this, is this question about whether or not the county government is itself functional, at least in DeKalb. That the DeKalb County Commission is just paving the roads right and keeping the sewers open, and the nuts and bolts of government, whether or not they are governing effectively. The ethics issues are pecking right at the surface of that. And I think that there's a tremendous mistake being made, a fundamental, tremendous mistake being made by the county commission by not addressing the ethical issues that have been raised directly. And I'll give you an example, like William Perry, a friend of mine, who runs Common Cause, hit the DeKalb County Board of Commissioners a couple of days ago because they refused to fund the commission, the Board of Ethics. The county has a Board of Ethics, and I didn't even realize that was the case up until a few days ago. The county has, and not just the Board of Ethics, they've got a strong Board of Ethics. They have a Board of Ethics that has subpoena power, which is crazy. The reason they have subpoena power is because 20 years ago, the legislature demanded the legislature of the state created a Board of Ethics for DeKalb County because there were corruption issues. This was 1990. And they made sure that the board would be relatively independent and would have subpoena power. But the county commission has refused the board's request to fund it fully. The board has requested about $60,000 because they want investigators, and they want an attorney that's willing to work for them in a way that makes sense. Their last attorney basically refused to do the work, so I am told. He basically wasn't working very hard, and the Board of Ethics fired him. He apparently is challenging that. I spoke to a couple of members of the Board of Ethics yesterday. So they're looking for $60,000 in order to hire investigators to take a look at some of the issues that have been raised by the grand jury that ultimately indicted the former CEO. Rather than give them the $60,000, the Board of Commissioners is only giving them $6,000 for training.
Wow.
Which is madness, given that the ethics issue is what all of the people who are doing incorporations keep coming back to as a justification for their incorporation movement. You're corrupt. We want to be separate from you. You could take that off the table for the cost of a cop car, and they're unwilling to spend the money. Like, this is a slam dunk. It's a stupid move for them not to do that. And I can't understand, I'm still trying to figure this out, why that made sense to them, given the optics, if nothing else. Why they thought that would go without notice is mind-boggling. And it's this kind of, it's this kind of Mickey Mouse politics where you can see the home run and you don't swing that is, fueling this question about whether or not they know what they're doing.
You're exactly right on that. That sometimes that, and I think this ties into the lifeline issue we talked about the first hour of the show, which is sometimes things are so obvious it just doesn't make sense why people are doing it or what motivates them. And I've noticed far too often, when things don't make sense in politics, it's because there's a checkbook somewhere that's motivating it not to make sense.
I agree. William Perry has asked people to call their county commissioner and ask them why they're not funding the Board of Ethics properly. And I think that's a wonderful idea, and I'm encouraging everybody to do the same. Call your county commissioner and ask them to spend the price of a police car on ethics.
You're absolutely right. Well, thank you so much, George, for calling in. You want to give the listeners some contact information, how they can contact your campaign, how they can contribute?
Sure. I'm not taking financial donations because, frankly, I wouldn't even know what to spend it on here. But I'm on Facebook, Chidi for Pine Lake.
All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Thanks to our caller, George, for calling in. We're going to throw to break. You're listening to Present Politics on Love 860 AM WAEC. I'm your host, Robert Patillo. Phone number 404-355-8699. Call in. After the break, we'll have political reporter, the editor of the Atlanta Progressive News, Matthew Cardinale. You're listening to Present Politics.
The lawyers of Johnson, Hopewell, Coleman offer the quality, experience, and expertise of a big firm, but with the personalized, client-centered approach to legal services that only a smaller firm can offer. Practice areas include personal injury, auto accidents, slip and fall, and negligent security, plus on-the-job injury, bankruptcy, family law, business and corporate law, wills and estates, and charter schools. Call today to see why Johnson, Hopewell, Coleman should be your one-stop law shop for all of your business and personal needs. Conveniently located in Decatur, within 5 miles of both 285 and I-20. Call and schedule an appointment right now. 404-289-2244. 404-289-2244. Or go online to jhclawyers.com. The hiring of an attorney is an important decision that should not be based solely upon advertising. Ask for free written information about the firm's qualifications and experience.
Tune your radio.
Tune in now. You can tune in to this radio station on any smartphone or tablet.
iPhone,
Android,
BlackBerry,
Nokia,
Samsung,
Windows phones,
or whatever you have. Download the free TuneIn app from your phone or tablet's app store.
Tune in with music, sports, news, and comedy.
From over 70,000 radio stations around the world, including this Beasley Broadcast Group station. Check it out at tunein.com
or your app store.
Homeowners, in today's world, no neighborhood is immune from burglaries. Get a state-of-the-art monitored home security system for Protect Your Home, your authorized ADT dealer, and get peace of mind today. Call right now, 1-888-213-2244, 1-888-213-2244. Local permit fees may be required. License number CAACO 6320, KY City of Louisville 483, and FLEC 13003427. Call for additional numbers. Call now, 1-888-213-2244.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Present Politics live on Love 860 AM. I'm your host, Robert Patillo. Calling number is 404-355-8699. We've had some great calls, some great guests today. We're entering our last half hour. Oh my God, time flies on a Saturday. But we've had some great information, great guests. Now we've had some more interest. We've had a lot of interest in the Facebook group on Twitter about this H. Lamar Willis story that we touched on briefly last hour. Again, you can follow us online, Twitter. If you're on Twitter, we're at Present Politics. On Facebook.com/Present Politics. Also, you can go to our website, www.presentpolitics.com. But there's been people said, well, you just kind of glossed over that H. Lamar Willis story. You gave us a little tidbit, gave us a little taste, but you didn't give us all the meat on the story. That sounded like a good juicy story for us to get into. So we're going to have political reporter and blogger Matthew Cardinale call in to talk about the story in a couple minutes. But I did want to give you guys some more background on it. So pretty much what's taking place is, as I said previously, H. Lamar Willis is the longtime city councilman for the at large for the city of Atlanta, and he's been being challenged by insurgent businessman Andre Dickens. And the race has just gotten dirty. It's gotten really ugly. With Willis lashing out at Dickens, saying that he's politically inexperienced, saying that he has a $1 million bankruptcy in his past that he needs to explain. He's even argued that Dickens isn't a resident of the city of Atlanta, that he's a carpetbagger, for lack of a better word. So this prompted Dickens to make mention of Willis's recent disbarment. Willis was disbarred for depositing $30,000 of a client's money into his own account. He claimed that it was done accidentally, offered to pay back the money, but the State Bar of Georgia revoked his law license. So now Councilman Willis can no longer practice law. Former Mayor Shirley Franklin got into the equation when she endorsed Dickens over Willis for the seat of city councilman at large, which prompted Willis to make mention of some of the difficulties of Mayor Franklin's administration. And here's some of the things that Willis mentioned. Willis stated that Mayor Franklin had many challenges during her tenure as mayor. Frankly, she dealt with them publicly while trying to be a mother and the mayor. To the extent there were missteps, arguably on numerous occasions, in my opinion, I felt it difficult to understand how she could so aggressively attack me. And then he also stated that no one called on her resignation. No one called for a change in the police department. No one called for a change in how she administered this government. I take issue with what is a personal matter to be considered as one that impacts my ability to serve. If my actions have caused me to be unfit, she should have submitted her resignation long before she left office. To the extent that it was not necessary for her, my ability to serve is more than reasonable, and I'm more than competent to serve, given my track record and my performance. So pretty much, Councilman Willis is saying, it doesn't matter if I stole my client's money. That has nothing to do with me being a city councilman. I'm going to leave that up to the voters. But he's saying that there's no bearing on my ability to lead, my ability to be a public servant, so long as my legislative record is clean, my personal and business record don't really matter. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I think that it absolutely matters. I think that what you do in your personal life, what you do in your business life have a complete bearing on what you do in your political life. You can't separate one from the other. Just as you saw with Anthony Weiner, the question wasn't whether or not him sexting people directly interfered with his capacity to be mayor or his capacity to be a congressman. It was about judgment and whether or not he would be able to make the proper decisions while in office. In order to, and that's what was brought into question by his extracurricular habits. Similarly, here with Councilman Willis, you have a situation where someone who has a history of financial improprieties is going to be dealing with the city budget, is going to be dealing with the funds for not simply himself and his clients, but for himself and the entire city. So I think that absolutely has bearing. So in response to this, we mentioned this briefly, but Mayor Franklin stated, once again, Mr. Willis's behavior is disappointing. His vicious verbal attack on me and my family indicate he is not fit for public office. Based on his comments today, he is a desperate man willing to say and do anything to win an election. If this is an effort to silence my voice, I am reminded of when once upon a time women were to be seen and not heard. Yeah, it's getting ugly, and I think for the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at a very, very aggressive race. Now we're being joined by political reporter and blogger Matthew Cardinale of the Atlanta Progressive News. Matthew, are you there?
Yes.
Hey, how are you doing, Matt?
Great, Robert. How are you?
I'm doing great also. Matthew is one of my good friends. We go back a few years, now currently enrolled in law school. You're becoming a lawyer, Matthew?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I felt that it was important to become a lawyer so I wouldn't get victimized anymore. You really got to do it these days.
It's funny because it's getting to the point now that lawyer is almost like barista. It seems like everyone does it.
Absolutely. Well, and, I spent a lot of time down at the Atlanta City Council, and, there are just so many proposals that come before the council, and they really defer to the law department, and, law department opine, and they, say whatever the mayor wants them to say, and then, that's the end of the story. So I just, I want to be able to say, no, that's not what the law says, or there's another interpretation.
Well, Matthew, you're one of the few people I know who has legal victories under his belt before even going to law school, let alone after law school.
That's true. That's true. And Lamar Willis was one of the 5 council members who wanted to silence the public, participated in a secret vote and wouldn't say how he voted, and so he's one of the 5 people who caused me to take the city all the way up to the Supreme Court without a law degree and win. In which the Supreme Court of Georgia ruled that they could not take a secret vote, so that he had to go back and disclose the fact that he wanted to silence the public, which is just one of the many things I hope to share with you with respect to HLW.
Absolutely. The reason I wanted you to call in is because you've been reporting on the city council on a lot of these issues for years, and now that it's come to light that now that this current information has come to light, does it surprise you at all that Councilman Willis was disbarred?
Absolutely not. This is he just has a pattern and practice of cheating, stealing, lying, and I don't use those words lightly, but that's really what the record shows. I'm just I take some confidence in knowing that the Supreme Court was willing to disbar him, looking at the facts. It's not something that they do very often. It's not something that they do lightly. And, there are certainly a lot of politically influential people who have leadership positions on the state bar. I'm sure there were a lot of people who tried to intervene on behalf of the political machine, and the bar didn't go for it, and the Supreme Court didn't go for it. So, and it's important. Lamar Willis stole $30,000 from an injured child.
Now, could you give some more back? I just know the media report. Do you know? I know you as a reporter, you have more information on the details of the case. So, what exactly happened that led to him being disbarred?
Well, I appreciate that. The corporate media has just really failed on reporting this issue. They're just like, well, the Supreme Court says that he took the money and he says he didn't, so end of story, you decide. Well, no, here's what happened. So he was representing a client, got a settlement for $30,000 for an injured child. The party that was supposed to pay the $30,000 wrote out the check, and he fraudulently endorsed the check, deposited into his own account at Chase Bank. And then, so there were certain things that were supposed to be done with that money, like pay for the medical bills and pay for the other attorneys and pay for, just other things that didn't get paid. And so the court ended up actually ordering the defendant to pay a second time. So the defendant actually paid a second time, and meanwhile went to Chase Bank and got Chase Bank to reverse the check because it was fraudulently endorsed. Of course, the proper thing would have been for Lamar Willis to set up like a trust that then, the funds would have been appropriately dispersed. So, he didn't do what was procedurally right. He didn't do what was substantively right. And then Chase Bank reversed the check, basically overdrawing his account. And so Chase Bank actually ended up taking a loss. And so what he has said is, everybody got paid who was supposed to get paid. And when you use passive voice like that, I guess that's true. They were made whole, but only because Chase Bank took a loss. It's not like he basically gained $30,000 from Chase Bank through this process. And I know maybe people have a hard time sympathizing with Chase Bank, but the truth is that he did not pay these people. He And he would have, converted the money to personal use if Chase Bank had not reversed the money, and the defendants actually would have had to pay twice. And maybe they would have come after him, but he's insolvent, and many people have come after him. He has tax liens. He has all kinds of garnishments from his city paycheck. And that's never stopped him before.
So, do you think that his personal and personal financial obligations, his personal debts, and also his business debts will have any impact on his ability to govern?
I think there's a fine line, and he's crossed it. I mean, you have to look at the nature of the debts. So when they're tax liens, so he's the city councilman who creates the property who votes on what the property taxes should be and what the garbage pickup fees should be, but then he doesn't want to pay those. I mean, I think that's different from, say, a personal bankruptcy or a business bankruptcy, which is what, Andre Dickens was involved in, during the economic crisis. Lamar Willis has tried to equate those two, and he's like, well, I'm the muddiest of all, but my opponent's got a little bit of mud on him, so,
All right, now, could you kind of explain about the Dickens debt? Because I don't know anything about Andre Dickens except he's a well-designed yard sign.
I haven't looked too deeply into it. I think he owned a furniture business, and he was leveraged and had some debt, and went bankrupt. But this happens all the time. There are plenty of people in public office who've had bankruptcies, and Hank Johnson being a good example, and he's actually been pretty progressive and served us pretty well. So I don't think that the personal bankruptcy is the problem. I think, I don't. I mean, he could at least have a payment plan in place, at least for these tax liens. I mean, that would be something. There's no evidence that that's the case. But other things that we need to know about Lamar Willis. I mean, he had a fake scholarship fund. He was collecting, thousands and thousands of dollars, purportedly for college scholarships and books. That the Secretary of State, Karen Handel, at the time prepared a complaint saying that he converted all that money, or a good deal of that money, to his personal use. Basically transferred money out of the so-called foundation account to either his personal or his business account. He also, that foundation was never registered as 501c3, tax exempt, or anything like that. So, and on both of these things, I think it's just interesting that here he's an attorney, and he just claims not to know what the law requires. In fact, that's what he said in his response to the state bar. He said, "Oh, I didn't know I was supposed to create a trust account for this injured child, because I just started practicing law and I just didn't know. Oh, well, I didn't know that that you had to get tax exempt status for a charity that you allege to have." And at some point, either he's lying or he's so ignorant about the law that we should wonder why we should allow him to create law if he can't understand it enough to follow it. I filed an ethics complaint against him about a year ago over a sole source contract that he was pushing with a company called Fog Fuels. When I obtained an email showing that he was basically having a consulting position with the company. Now, the Atlanta City Ethics Office was never able to find any evidence that he got a financial benefit from this company, but the email that I got really makes it look like he was voting on a contract and promoting a contract, sponsoring a contract for a company that he was on. And that company, by the way, is currently under investigation by the SEC. So that's also troubling. I'm working on a story also right now that should be out on AtlantaProgressiveNews.com pretty soon, where I am pulling together old video clips of him really just kind of mistreating members of the public. And he's very aggressive and just very like verbally vindictive when he has the microphone, and he goes after members of the public. So people may remember during the airport concessions debacle, he went after William Perry of Common Cause. At one point, he kind of threatened Ron Shakir, who's someone who speaks at city council a lot, and he said, "Don't you say one more word or else I'm going to lose my job," which, was to imply, like, I'm going to beat you up. And then one time he went after the public defender, Rosalie Joy. He was trying to basically privatize the public defender office and was just questioning her and kind of badgering her. And she just actually fainted and just fell over and collapsed on the floor after the way that he was treating her. So I'm going to be putting together like a video compilation of like Lamar Willis's greatest hits. But I think it's also relevant to look at how he treats members of the public, how he treats city employees, and these attacks that we've seen, him attacking Shirley Franklin, him attacking Andre Dickens. I mean, it's not new. This is how he behaves when he has the microphone, and this is how he behaves now. So it's not anything. It's not Mr. Hyde has come out and he's Dr. Jekyll. No, he's Mr. Hyde all the time, even when he's sitting there during the full council meeting.
Well, you are the independent reporter of record for this city. It's interesting that you get stories that no one else gets and that you make sure to keep the public informed. I definitely encourage people to go to AtlantaProgressiveNews.com. Let me give you a quick plug. How can people get in contact with you?
People can email me at Matthew, MATTHEW, at AtlantaProgressiveNews.com. And the website is AtlantaProgressiveNews.com. Also, people should look for, we have something called the scorecard, the Atlanta City Councilman or Council Member Scorecard. We have a spreadsheet with about 45 different votes that were controversial split votes, and we've assigned scores to every council person on the basis of their voting records, which, as you know, Robert, we make endorsements, and we try to make our endorsements substantive and transparent and based on meaningful criteria. So you can see that he is either second from the bottom or third from the bottom out of the 15 of them, based on specific votes that he's taken over the years, where he, in our opinion, took positions that weren't beneficial to the public.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on. We'll definitely have you back when some more news breaks. All right. You're listening to Present Politics on Love 860 AM WAEC. This is Robert Patillo. Call in 404-355-8699. After the break, we'll have political consultant Fred Hicks on. You're listening to Present Politics.
The lawyers of Johnson, Hopewell, Coleman offer the quality, experience, and expertise of a big firm, but with the personalized, client-centered approach to legal services that only a smaller firm can offer. Practice areas include personal injury, auto accidents, slip and fall, and negligent security, plus on-the-job injury, bankruptcy, family law, business and corporate law, wills and estates, and charter schools. Call today to see why Johnson, Hopewell, Coleman should be your one-stop law shop for all of your business and personal needs. Conveniently located in Decatur, within 5 miles of both 285 and I-20. Call and schedule an appointment right now. 404-289-2244. 404-289-2244. Or go online to jhclawyers.com. The hiring of an attorney is an important decision that should not be based solely upon advertising. Ask for free written information about the firm's qualifications and experience.
Welcome back to President Politics on Love 860 AM. I'm your host, Robert Patillo. Call number is 404-355-8699. We're being joined by famed political consultant and strategist Fred Hicks. Fred, are you there?
I am here. Good to talk to you.
Oh, thank you so much. You know, Fred is so used to just talking to you at the bar, just hanging out. It's great to have you on the show.
Hey, don't tell anybody about that. That's too much, right?
Well, you know, we only have a few minutes left on the show, but I definitely wanted to have you on. We're going to have you back in the future. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, I know we said we were going to talk about the debt ceiling and the government shutdown, but I think most people are pretty tired of that. So I wanted to talk about some state politics. Are you down for that?
I am down like four flats. Go ahead, Rob. Let's talk about it.
All right. So what do you think about the Democratic primary for U.S. Senate in Georgia? What are you hearing out there in the streets?
Yeah, you know, I think the fundraising numbers tell a great story. Michelle Nunn put in, $1.7 million, which was, I think, a figure that surprised a lot of people. Again, whether the money came from in-state or out-of-state, the fact that she's able to put in that kind of money is certainly an impressive statement and a testament to the Democrats' desire to play in that race in 2014.
And, you know, it's interesting you say that because normally Democrats lag behind in fundraising, specifically in Georgia, with regards to statewide races, simply because most people don't think we have a chance statewide. Since the 2010 sweep, we haven't seen much money coming into the state on races like this.
Absolutely. You know, it's... I think with the 2010 sweep and the subsequent legislation that's passed and then signed by the governor, along with the recent news about the governor's issues, I think that's giving people a little bit of hope, a little bit of excitement, but certainly I think it's helping people have realized that you have to, at the very least, have some sort of balance in government. And if you want to play, you got to get involved.
Exactly. So what do you think about the other candidates in the Senate race? I know most of them either did not turn in fundraising reports or have very low numbers. What do you think they're going to have to do to make themselves legitimate candidates?
Yeah, you know, on both sides of the aisle, you know, you have a crop, I guess is the best way of saying it, of front runners, and then you have other people who are bringing up the rear. And so the idea of finding space with this new primary schedule is going to be it's going to be a very interesting concept. They're going to have to find a way to raise money because just a sheer number of folks, particularly on the Republican side, the sheer number of candidates is going to drive the cost of statewide advertising from billboards to TV to radio, things like that. It's going to drive the cost up tremendously just to be competitive. And of course, you have to, they're going to have to finance a runoff. Now, what's interesting to me is that people have thought that, or people think that having a longer runoff period is a good thing, but I think if I were a candidate in that Senate race, particularly a Republican candidate, having a really long runoff would make me nervous because you've got to raise a whole set of money again, you know, to get through that. And then you have to turn around and raise a third set of dollars for another campaign period, which you've always had. But the idea of campaigning all through the summer when you have lower, you know, presumably you have a lower voter turnout, lower voter interest and things like that, that's a scary prospect. That would be a very, very scary prospect to me. And I think that's the kind of thing that's going to keep the lower tier candidates on both sides from really being able to in this case, this year, with this particular race, be able to break through. So we'll see.
Now, how would you handicap this Republican race in the Republican side of the Senate race?
Yeah, so, you know, I think Karen Handel is very interesting. She's launching a jobs tour, which I think is smart on her part. I think that, you know, particularly in the wake of the shutdown, the debt ceiling, again, whether you're conservative or liberal, Republican or Democrat, I think, and even if you're tuned in, I think all of us were at least a little surprised at how connected our lives are to the federal government. And when you start talking about a shutdown, how that can impact things financially. So with that in mind, I think that Karen Handel is making a very smart move, but she has a long way to go to catch up to your Phil Gingrichs or particularly your Phil Gingrichs of the world. But I think if Jack Kingston can hang in there and can have a better fundraising quarter this period, that he would be a strong dark horse, but of course his challenge is that all the other front-running candidates or presumptive front-runners are from the donor-rich metro area, and he's from Southeast Georgia, and that makes it a little difficult for him. How's that for hedging my bets on that?
Hey, look, this is how you stay one of the top political consultants and fundraisers in the state. You hedge your bets. What about David Perdue? What do you think about him in this race? Former CEO of Reebok, former CEO of Family Dollar, billionaire. He could self-finance his race and his opponent's race if he wanted to. What do you think his chances are?
Yeah, I think right now the field is just pretty crowded and pretty murky. I think going back to the debt ceiling, there was a real opportunity for someone there to take a stand, and none of them did. Everyone said the same thing. Oh, we'd sign off, we support Ted Cruz, and we do all these kinds of things. And I don't know, maybe that's what the Republican primary voter wants to hear, but I think when you look at, again, two candidates, David Perdue, who can self-finance, and again, Jack Kingston, I think that those two, again, being from the outside and who have to work a little bit harder than the other candidates, I think that you'll see that they can at least make some noise. I just think right now it's just so hard to predict because you have so many other things going on that people haven't really tuned in. Really, honestly, I think that race is going to come down to and or will be a bellwether of where Republicans in Georgia are. Are they Tea Party? Are they traditional Reagan Republicans, or what? And so, depending on where that falls, the candidate who recognizes that and is able to tap into that wave, like the candidates who tapped into the 2010 Tea Party wave, whoever can tap into that wave, it'll be very interesting, and we'll have the opportunity to move ahead. But I like David Perdue. I think his chances are just as good as anyone else's right now.
Yeah, I definitely see that race not really getting shaken out until probably early spring, the primaries in May. So we know we're definitely going to have a runoff with this many candidates. So I can see it being April, and we still don't really have a Republican front runner. So I wanted to turn over to the governor's race because, of course, Nathan Deal is going to win the Republican Party nomination. We know that much. But the question is, are the Democrats even going to field a candidate to challenge him?
Yeah, well, I think everyone on the Democratic side got really, really excited about the idea of having Jason Carter run for governor. As that idea's been floated around out there. I don't know if he'll do it, but I think it would be tremendously exciting. And the idea of having a non-Carter ticket for statewide races, I think that changes the map of what's possible. Because the bottom line right now is there's a huge gap between Democrats and Republicans, and you're not going to see a lot of switchover from one way or the other. So you have to find an inspirational candidate or an inspirational pairing that moves people to register to vote and moves people to actually vote because they see that there's some sort of opportunity out there. So if you end up with someone like, no disrespect intended to Connie Stokes, who's already declared for that seat, but if you have someone like a Jason Carter, and you pair that up with a Michelle Nunn, I think that everyone, both on the Democratic and the Republican side, will stand up, take notice, and that, my friend, will greatly influence the answer to your previous question of who emerges on the Senate side.
But it's interesting, though, because Georgia is the state that has a almost 35% African-American population. They have a nearly 20% Hispanic population. Do you think it would be strange to have two occasions at the top of our ticket to not have any minority representation in the general election next year?
Well, unfortunately, you have general population numbers, but it's not like that when you look at the registered voters. Latinos make up, 1 to 3% of the registered voters in Georgia. African Americans make up, about, I think it's 12 to 13% of the registered voters. And then when you look at turnout, the numbers fluctuate greatly. So, again, it goes back to the idea that you have to move residents to registered voters and then move registered voters to actual voters. And that's where you see the gap right now. So until you see that happen, I think you're going to continue to see a lack of minority representation at the top of the ticket, at least for the next couple of years. But so it'll be interesting to see. But I don't think that that minorities, African Americans or Latinos at this point who are Democratic would stay home because there's not minority representation. Again, if you have that kind of a pairing, Nunn Carter, I think that gets all Democrats excited about the idea. Because, let's be honest, there's not a stronger pairing, at least based on family name, that could happen in 2014 anywhere in the state of Georgia. And so, people who are on the fence or who think it's not possible, I think they would all see that a Nunn-Carter pairing as the best chance Georgia has of going blue at any seat in a long time. And I'll tell you, Robert, what else will happen? You get those two out there running, there's going to be an exponential increase in the number and the amount of dollars that are flowing into the state. And I think you'll see Democrats, or at least you should see Democrats pressing for other seats, like congressional seats, like county commission seats, and things like that, and really kind of riding the wave, which will have a benefit both going up to Nunn and Carter and down to the two candidates at a local or legislative level, so that maybe someone who ran in a seat like, 2 years ago would maybe decide to run again.
Well, we just ran out of time. We're going to have you back on next week. Thank you so much, Fred. Thanks so much, Matthew. Thank you so much, George Korn, George Chidi. Thanks to all our guests, all of our listeners. You listen to Present Politics on Love 860 AM. I'm your host, Robert Patillo. Thank you so much. We'll join you next week.
You've been listening to Present Politics with Rashad Ritchie and Robert Patillo. Join them next Saturday from 4 to 6 p.m. as they cover the present politics that affect our local, state, and national communities. For more information, go to presentpolitics.com.